Hi, and welcome to Beyond the Hype. Is AI actually transforming productivity? A couple of housekeeping notes first, and then we're going to get started. First of all, as we go through the webinar today, there is a Q&A tab. Please ask questions as you go. We've actually had a couple of questions submitted at the time people registered, and we're going to try and answer as many as we can online. And then if we don't get them answered online, we're actually going to go ahead and follow up with you to make sure that you get answers. We'll also have some polls, and we really appreciate your participation in those. We're going to record the webinar, so hopefully that's okay with everybody. And then if you'd like to rewatch it or share it with somebody later, you can get it from AMC Bridge. I'm Jim Brown. I'm the president of Tech Clarity. I'm going to be moderating today this continued executive series that has been organized and brought to us by AMC Bridge. And thank you for doing that. I think these conversations have been fantastic. I love this one because we had this conversation not quite 2 years ago, and a lot has changed in AI, and we were able to actually get back a lot of the same participants from last time. So hopefully we'll get that a bit of a refresh of what's happened since then. I know I've learned a lot, and I think we've all accomplished a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and let the participants introduce themselves. So what I'm going to do is have you actually start from the way we're pictured. Anthony, if you could start and just share a little bit about you, your company, but then also what's your role with AI? How are you involved in it?
Sure, thanks. I'm Anthony Hauck. I'm the co-founder with Ian Keogh, and I'm the chief product officer of Hypar. We've been around since about 2018. We have started to incorporate AI into our products to help designers make decisions about early stage design.
Great. Dan, let's turn it to you.
Yeah, nice to meet everyone. Dan Williamson at Ryan Companies. Ryan Companies is a national real estate development and construction company, kind of playing in a number of different sectors of buildings. And I'm our director of artificial intelligence. I lead up our strategic implementation of AI across the enterprise. And that involves everything from what we choose to buy, what we choose to build, and how we choose to kind of mature in our data journey in AI at the company.
Great. Patrick, to you.
Great, thanks, Jim. Patrick Murphy, was raised working in a family construction business called Coastal Construction based in Florida, do a lot of vertical high-rise construction. So grew up working all aspects of that business. Then got elected to Congress, served 2 terms in DC, spent a lot of time thinking about the future of work. So when I rejoined the family construction business, I realized that not a lot had changed, similar to most construction companies out there. And I looked at our overhead and basically saw that estimating and pre-con was the biggest piece of overhead. So we had an idea to use AI to automate the takeoff process. So started a company called Togal.AI, which means builder in the Irish language, fun fact. And so we use AI to automate takeoffs. And we've since spun out a sister company called CodeComply.ai, which automates your fire, life safety, ADA compliance for municipal governments, architects, engineers, et cetera. Thank you.
Great. We'll turn it to Eric, and welcome. TechSoft was not involved last time, so we are honored to have TechSoft 3D represented. Eric, if you can introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Thank you to AMC Bridge also for this event. So I'm Eric Vinchon. I lead our product strategy department at TechSoft 3D. Just to say a few words about TechSoft 3D, we develop software components, 3D engineering software component that software editors integrate in their applications. So our tools are used to import, extract information from CAD, BIM data. We have visualization engine to display this data on web, mobile, desktop. And in terms of AI, we really see ourselves as an enabler. First, because with our technology, people can extract information from BIM model, CAD data, and we also transform this data so that machine learning algorithms can learn from it.
Fantastic. Thanks, Eric. And Igor, thank you again with AMC Bridge for bringing this together. If you could introduce yourself.
Yes, Igor Tsinman, President, co-founder of AMC Bridge. AMC Bridge is software development consultancy that partners with clients in engineering, manufacturing, and construction. And since we're in construction discussion, that's major topic of it, to deliver solution to solve business problem using advanced technologies, mostly software and related technology. In terms of AI, we kind of being in a crossroads and of intersection of AI. We have three major directions. First of all, we work with our clients to evaluate and discover them where AI could be used in their business. We use AI to supplement our development efforts and enhance our development efforts. As you probably most on this call know, surprisingly, to a degree, AI has a huge effect on software development industry. And we also use AI to support our internal processes. So all these three areas kind of interconnected, and I'm kind of right now leading the efforts internally to integrate and deliver best solutions in all these three areas of enterprise.
Right.
So
I love it.
AI is the focus of our company right now.
Fantastic. I love the fact that this panel can look at things at all different levels. So first, I want to talk a little bit about AI readiness and progress. I mean, at Clarity, our research shows that companies are getting beyond the proof of concept phases and really getting value from AI. And I know there are a lot of stories out there about the hype and that, failed projects and companies not getting the value they're looking for. But I continue to see the people that are making it work and hear the success stories. But the last time we got together as a group, we talked about specifically for the construction industry. The construction industry lags in technology in some ways, and we asked ourselves then, and I'm going to ask you again: is the construction industry ready for AI? Has that changed over the last 2 years? Anthony, I'm going to start with you again.
Sure. I would say it's fundamentally changed in the last couple of years. I think some of the big changes we're seeing is that the hype has actually kind of dissipated as people have started to touch the tools and seen either value or lack thereof, depending on what they try out. And so I think there's a much more sophisticated interaction with what's available out there and the understanding of both the possibilities and the limitations. And so I think we're now starting to see AI rightly applied to targeted problems where it's well understood, like what correctness looks like. And so there's a better assessment of the reliability of these tools in certain contexts and how they assist and where caution is indicated.
Dan and Ryan, I'm curious. We had some interesting comments a couple of years back, but what have you seen as the changes in AI readiness at Ryan Companies, and tell us a little bit about the progress that you've made. Obviously, you've got somebody that's in your position and fully in charge of it, which is a big step in and of itself.
Yeah, I think some of the readiness and what I like to talk about with a lot of other folks is really about people and culture, right? And so I think that the lag comes from an uneducated group or an uninterested group initially in the way technology kind of can enhance their day to day. I think both with some generational shifts that's helping, but I also feel that what our approach has been at Ryan is been correlated around communication and education of folks, bringing them along with the journey and giving them the why this technology is really going to help improve their day-to-day operations and their day-to-day life. Generally speaking, take away some of the mundaneness and automate some of the things that they don't need to be doing to focus their attention. Everyone's to-do list is longer than they can get to, and we're trying to really educate people about the value of these technologies, and then also just get it in their hands, get them pilots, get them hands-on, not expecting that we're going to solve all the world's problems, but we're going to chink away at this stuff and really bring them along for the journey. And that has come at us implementing an enterprise strategy, being very thoughtful, being strategic, and again, getting people, teammates hands on the tools, but also educating them about the purpose of these tools, right? We're not just throwing a superintendent a new tool and say, go have it, tell me how it is, but trying to bring them along the journey that what this means for them and what it means for our company. And it also means talking across the pipeline of leadership in the company and getting alignment. Not to say we've done it better than anyone else, but we're working at it, and we're trying our best. So as far as readiness, I think we've seen a lot more interest and engagement because there's the hype, but I think people have gotten past the hype and saying this isn't going away. This is sticking around and starting to see where the value can be driven. And I think back to what Anthony said, finding those focused problems where it does apply. That's been really helpful for people to get it click in their minds, and when they get their hands on the tools, they can see that click, and that just accelerates our velocity to make progress.
Right. Patrick, one of the things that came up last time was, do people have enough data ready for it? I've started to see people still saying that, and other people that maybe their data is not fully ready, but they're taking advantage of it. You require data to be able to pull from. How are you seeing the readiness of the people you work with?
Great question. And as they say, the data is the gold in AI. And I don't think most companies are prepared. Their data is not sanitized enough for most of the current AI models. As we continue to progress with the AI technology, that's going to change, and AI is getting better and better at handling data in all sorts of different formats. So I think that problem will be solved with the technology. But generally speaking, for a company like ours, it's all about the plans. And getting to 97, 98, 99% accuracy is very difficult, right? And takes millions and millions of plans labeled in a very, very precise manner. And I think what's so challenging about any startup in this particular space is you can't just go buy a data set on Google or some website, right? You've got to take the time, especially again with today's models, and like others on this call, we started 6 years ago. Some models have come a long way, but it took a lot of data to get to a model and a lot of discipline and training. So long way to go. And I think, look, that's one side of construction, right? Is the plans. It's obviously an important piece, right? But whether it's the specs, whether it's the accounting, whether it's compliance and insurance, right? There's so many departments that have data in all sorts of formats. I mean, I was on a job site yesterday, coincidentally, and concrete trucks, they had a big pour going on, so I was there, and they had little pink slips of paper, right? And how much concrete is being poured, and they're sitting there with the slips, and someone's counting it, and they're checking it, and they're verifying, right? And it's just normal. Like, it wasn't even a question. Like, this is like a really dumb way to do it. I was just the way it is, right? Someone's going back to the office. I'm like, what are we doing? If I wasn't so damn busy, I'd try to go solve that problem, right? And that's just one trade that's still doing it, and the data, and we've got folders of tickets. So still a long way to go, but we're getting there.
AI over pink tickets is a new requirement.
Yeah.
Eric, what about the people that you're working with? You're in the enablement world. Are people ready, and what can you do to help people that maybe aren't quite so ready?
Yes, we've also seen a lot of momentum since 2 years. Actually, probably 70% of the software company we work with have already delivered product capability that leverage AI, or are planning to do that within the 12 coming months. But on the other side, the type of use case we see are still really narrow. You cannot resolve generalized problems with BIM data, 3D data, like you do today with text, LLM, picture, and so there's still a lot of complexity here. There is, getting this data is challenging, but that's not the only challenge we see. The way we represent this data so that, again, different machine learning technique can learn from them change almost every month. You see, 20 publications, they all are the state of the art. And yeah, generalization is still not possible today.
Good. Thank you, Eric. Igor, what are you seeing out there in terms of maturity and readiness?
It's a mixed picture for us, and advanced company who started early and not necessarily with AI, with digitalization process, and that definitely helps right now. As Patrick said, AI is a foundation, or sorry, data is a foundation of the AI, and if your data in pink slips, right, no AI would help you. And this, we still see these companies who come to us on the hype process and ask, oh, AI should help us, but
right.
When you look at the processes, they're still in a pre-digital age. So before AI could do anything, there's quite a few groundbreaking work has to happen. And there's other companies who are quite advanced in the digitalization era and taking care, or at least thinking of taking care of the data and normalization. And that's where AI could help. But again, those companies would divide and kind of grant thinking of implementing huge AIs that would solve all the problems, and more practical who select the real key business issues that are hurting them and are asking us to evaluate how AI potentially could be used. And this is the latest one, I think the most productive use of AI. Again, it's a wide spectrum still, but definitely AI is on the mind of C level executives, and they're pushing this down, and depending on readiness, it may or may not be helpful at this point.
Jim, if I could jump in on that point real quick, it's a great point. And back to the previous question, one thing that I'd say is very different today than it was 2 years ago, if I wear my Togal hat for a second, is the amount of companies that are asking Togal to speak to their AI tech committee and answer the tech questionnaire that we never had 2 years ago, right? Like it wasn't even a thought. And now, I don't know what percentage, but it's a decent amount of deals where we're talking to AI committees and they're asking questions about our data, what we do with the data. They're asking about, security and the usage, right? And all that kind of stuff. So I think that's a real indication that the industry as itself is catching on with the maturity to have a committee itself to ask these questions.
Yeah,
Patrick,
go ahead, Anthony. That's fine.
I was going to say one of the interesting things we find on the design side is how all of these firms really are differentiated on their approach. One of my favorite games is we have customers who actually move from one company to another, and then they kind of pick up our software again. And so what I always ask is, you're in this company working in this sector, now you're in a different company working in the same sector. Is anything different? And I always get the answer like, oh yeah, no, it's very different here on how they approach problems. And so I think one of the interesting things around AI is that it's not necessarily always going to be about like a generalized solution from inputs from a wide variety of sources, but a very targeted learning set that actually comes right back out of the people using it. And that becomes a differentiator from that firm, and there's a possibility to capture the culture of the firm and re-deliver it through these instruments.
Yeah, good. I want to pull Dan and Eric. I want to pull Dan and Eric in here if I can. One of the things I'd like to understand, we've heard about sort of people issues, we've heard about technical issues, and actually the raising of sort of the governance side of things, data readiness. Dan, I'm going to start with you. I mean, what do you need to be successful for an AI implementation? What are the key questions that companies should ask? Igor, you mentioned specifically a business problem to solve. And what are the critical factors to get started?
I'm going to start with maybe a different way of answering that. I think the best way to implement AI successfully is to realize it's not about the AI. The best AI implementations are about what problems are we solving, and AI likely, has a play in helping solve that problem, but it's not about the AI. And I think moving beyond, it is helpful to talk about that technology as people want to hear it addressed, but I think realizing very quickly that the best implementations are not about the fact that AI was a part of that solution. Again, I'm in the role. I talk about it. I have to make sure that it is a part of the success metrics that we have. But the most successful implementations we have are about looking at what problems does a business partner have, and that we've partnered really tightly with them to solve what they want to solve. And so a successful implementation is about forming the right partnerships with business people, educating them about the possibilities of future states of those roles, and then working really closely to build what they want. And I think, a lot of us are saying it on this panel of, finding those specific use cases that are either both differentiating your company, but are also just what your people want solved. And I think we can find those solutions. And so, my approach to that question is not that AI is, for AI's sake, but it is about what problems do we really want to solve.
Eric, you're a technologist, but we're hearing a lot about business and people. What do people need to do to get started?
Well, I would first effectively echo what Dan just say. In fact, just a funny story. Like, there is this stage where nobody has enough skill and learning about AI, and then suddenly you realize the capability, and you get so excited about it that you treat AI like an hammer in your hand with all nails you have, and well, you can last months of work for that. So effectively, you really need to be clear about when AI should be used and not. In fact, the rules is if you find another hard code solutions or rules-based solutions, implement it. It's a lot easier to set up, to maintain, a lot more predictable than any AI solutions you will bring. So that will be the first pattern. The second pattern I see is, and it's a little bit the same idea, like, there's a lot of buzz, and for good reasons, about LLM, RAG technique, agentic world, and system, but they are also difficult to maintain, difficult to control. And most of the times, like, people start with a complex technical solutions for a simpler solutions that may exist with AI or without AI. Like, classifications problems can be solved really, really easily, and large language model integrate a lot of uncertainty and maintenance problem into that. So yeah, simplicity will be the rules.
Good.
You know,
Igor,
If I don't
I'm
don't
going to turn
mind,
it to Igor real quickly if I can, and then we're going to go to the poll. I just want to make sure we're kind of moving this around a little bit. Igor,
Dan, you wanted to say something, right?
yeah, I want to add some, I think, tangibles for the audience about what beyond just alignment and business partnership. I think having a data strategy is a core to successful AI implementation. It is about the data. Having a business focused data strategy is critical to AI implementation. So I wanted to offer up some core tangibles for the audience. That is important. I think building your culture around what data is not, what AI is and what AI is not, is important for that AI successful implementation. And then setting aggressive goals to implement things. I think those make it successful, but you have to have a data strategy. I don't think it's as successful without a really good data strategy.
Yeah, and it's actually, sorry, it's actually a very important point. I would support, but I kind of just had a discussion this morning, and we discussed this too. Do we go in a grand strategy or we go for the quick success? And I actually said both, because success breeds success, and you need to show success to get people encouraged and excited. But at the same time, you have to build a foundation, and data is a foundation. And while you build a kind of use case that it can show and demonstrate to your executives and your coworkers and different, get everyone excited, you have to think about what the foundation for future growth. And as Dan said, this data is the foundation. Think about the data in the company, how it could be integrated, accessed, etc., shared.
You could also see this way, like your data strategy to some extent is going to last for a decade. Your AI implementation is going to change likely in 6 months, 12 months, given the pace of innovation. And so that just reinforces what you say, Igor.
I mean, I would also add it's very important to keep the goal that you're trying to reach in mind, because this is just one more tool. I had one customer who was very excited about someone doing a text to floor planning solution, and I said, how long are you going to work on that prompt till you get the thing you like, when you realize you could have just drawn that? And so there's always a balance between, is the instrument actually helping you achieve the efficiencies you want versus your traditional, how are you doing it now, and where that tip over is for you.
Okay. Let's try and get a poll question up and involve the audience here a little bit. We'd really like to understand from an audience perspective, what is your level of AI adoption? And if you can just choose between those that, maybe you don't have any and you're learning. Some people may be just doing their research to understand. Some may have plans in place. Others, small projects or pilots, still maybe in that proof of concept phase, or maybe some smaller things. and then those with significant use. Give people just another few seconds to add in here. It seems to be sort of settling down to a couple of key areas. There's still a lot of companies researching what they want to do, and that's sort of neck and neck with small projects and pilots, and significant uses there in some companies. And that's kind of what we're seeing in our research. We're seeing companies that really have really embraced it and taken a lead. We're seeing others that are in the proof of concept or doing some smaller things, but there's still a lot that are still in that planning phase or still in that researching phase. And I think it's a big difference in maturity in what we're seeing in the market. Let's turn a little bit about to current problems or opportunities that we see. I know we've talked about takeoffs and things like that. Dan, I'm going to start with you here. What are some of the current opportunities that are business problems that can be addressed that you think are either the most pressing or that are the most applicable for AI? What have you found as sort of the things that are working for you guys?
Yeah. So I'm going to talk about it in maybe two different ways. One, I think something that our entire industry in construction should be, and is, intensely focused on is safety. I think there's an immense amount of things we can do related to safety on job sites. And I think that should be a core focus and is of many, many contractors out there. And so I think that, what we're going to see as far as AI being brought to the table or data and reality capture is going to really help hopefully accelerate outcomes as it relates to safety on job sites. So I think that has to be first and foremost something that everyone works on, and there is immense opportunities. It will cause behavior change in people in order to help enable some of those outcomes, but I think that's an immensely huge opportunity to improve those outcomes. And then I'll talk about it a little bit more on a way in some of the ways we've thought about here at Ryan. It's more about the capabilities of AI and where do those capabilities apply within our business. And if you look at the business of real estate, design, construction, a lot of it is unstructured PDF documents, whether it's drawings, contracts, leases. It's in unstructured documents. And so we've kind of focused it on trying to find core competencies and being able to do stuff. And I use it that broadly because there's almost an endless amount of things you can do with that unstructured data. And so getting really good about how we handle that data, what we do with it, and having team members that can really accelerate use cases related to that. And so again, that could be on our ability to respond to work faster. It could be understanding insights across the pipeline of our pursuit process, our marketing process, understanding our contract language, whether it's generating that contact faster. The core competency related to unstructured documents is an immensely valuable use case to go after and something we've looked at it. And then specifically on the construction side, another capability you'd look at is reality capture. How can we leverage reality capture data and computer vision as two AI capabilities to really elevate some outcomes in that space? So those are ways in which I'd answer, I think, very clear ways to accelerate adoption and accelerate the usefulness of the tools.
Great, Dan. Patrick, what are you seeing as some of the real value-added opportunities that people are going after? And I know you've expanded from 2 years ago, you had sort of one major use case. Now you've got a whole nother spin-off company. So obviously you're finding new ways.
I'd say number one, just broad brush, in my opinion, the most successful AI companies are the ones that integrate into current workflows and solve a solution that help get momentum right away. Some black box that does everything for everybody, we're not there yet. It's scary to people. It's not happening. Find those solutions that exist. There's a lot of great ones that are out there already. If you want to build your own, more power to you. But I think someone just mentioned this earlier. Find that momentum, right? Find a team, maybe it's a job site, maybe it's an accounting, like wherever it is that's really leaning into AI, help them find a solution and lean in and get momentum. And then maybe that can help spread through the company that, hey, this didn't steal my job. It enhanced my productivity. I'm now happier in my job. And guess what? Our company is growing and we have better margins, right? In the case of Togal, we had a company recently that came to us that was using a legacy software, and they said that they wanted to grow their business by 25%. That was their goal. They came to us after 40 days. They'd grown their bids out the door by 215%. No brainer. The $3,000 it cost them for a license was, I think, the cheapest money they ever spent, right? So that's just an example. Obviously, I'm biased, but there's a lot of solutions out there where AI is adding productivity, where companies especially the small and mid-sized companies, can now really, really grow, where before they would have had to go hire an employee for $100,000+ a year. And I would just add, the possibilities are endless, right? We are in the very, very early innings of what AI is going to do to this industry, what it's going to do to the world, and I'm thrilled about it. For us, there's opportunities around scheduling, estimating, carbon footprints, warranty and maintenance, right? Everything I just mentioned comes back to a set of plans. If you can understand those plans really well, the materials that are being chosen, the assemblies and parts, you can solve a lot of those problems I just mentioned for the long tail of real estate. So I think there's tremendous opportunity from just one little company like us, not to mention everything else that's out there.
Yeah. Anthony, what are you seeing out there?
Well, one of the things we think there's a lot of potential for, and we're doing some implementation. We're not the only people around this. Is machine learning around spatial relationships, because one of the experiences of some of the gray hairs on the call, including myself, would be the guy who looked like us, like we do now, and came by your desk and pointed at something and muttered, "Gonna have a problem there," and then walked on by. And there's a possibility that your AI starts actually suggesting spatial relationships or problematic areas to look at, and let the designer start making judgments. And we have some capabilities of this in Hypar now. We see an enormous potential around gathering data around how design is done and how successful designs look, and making sure that designs converge towards success, or that if you're diverging from a successful previous procedure, that you also understand why you're doing that and what the possible implications of that deviation are. So we think where the text data and numeric data is like immediately accessible, we think there's an enormous potential in all this vector-based data, or as processed through images, whatever, to understand the why of design and re-inject that into future decisions.
Great. Last time we talked, there was a whole lot of talk about generative AI, and I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that ChatGPT was sort of just coming on the scenes and making its public. Not that it was new, but it was just that it was gaining so much attention. This year, our research is starting to show different approaches, whether it's RAG, whether it's we're hearing a lot about agentic AI. I'd like to maybe start with you, Igor, and understand what approaches are companies using. Obviously, the technology is secondary to the business problems, but what's working, and are people coming to you and saying, "Hey, we think this is going to be the right architecture," or just starting with the problem?
Yeah, I just want to point it out that among the directions and potentials that people mentioned, generative AI and large language models didn't present itself them, right?
Yeah.
So despite all fascination with large language models and popularity of ChatGPT and similar tools, people are coming back to kind of old-fashioned machine learning, image recognition, and OCR, if anybody remembers that term. So I think the positive impact of ChatGPT is kind of renewed interest to the algorithms and approaches that have been in the market for a while, but kind of been on the side burner and nobody paid attention to them. But now, because it's all called AI, people are more attentive. Well, in most cases, I just want to point it out, in most cases, people come to us and without sometimes any idea what AI could be in their particular environment and how it could be used. And we sit down together and doing workshops to really match what the problems they have with the technologies that could be applicable. And in most cases, it's not a big, large language model. It's much more kind of down to earth algorithms. And the RAG approach, where you combine local data with a global with global data and global algorithms actually starting to penetrate it and kind of bring attention to the possibility of implementing large language models. But I would say it's just in infancy, just in infancy.
Very good. Eric, what are you seeing in terms of technologies either being requested, being applicable, being successful?
Well, today, large language model is certainly what has the most impact. When you combine them with RAG systems, you can use GPT with your own data. And so it's making a huge impact for any business. And any times you need to collect, summarize, cross informations, which apply to almost any business. You mentioned agent on top of that. They are at their earlier stage. They're still in stables. Like where I see them making the biggest impact is software development. You mentioned that, Igor. Like a software company today that start with a new project, versus a 20-year-old software that has a lot more context. Well, you'll develop 5, 6, 7 times faster. So the pace of innovations in the software world is gonna accelerate. These systems are gonna replace no code, and they already have a huge impact. Then everything is split, in different technology. If you're working with reality captures, you're working with a completely different stack. If you're working with picture, you'll be working with CNN. If you're working with more complex cat data, well, you'll work with additional type of technology with graph, things like that. So it really depends. But I would say that large language model probably impact every single business today with RAG and agent. And the other techniques are more specific to engineering, being CAD.
Just want to add and emphasize one more time the very important point that Patrick made. Is that the key to success is to be able to integrate into existing, well, hopefully digital workflow, because the AI solution on itself is nice to show, great demo, great to go to conference, but practically useless. It has to be a part of the existing ecosystem. It has to help what's already in place. The enterprise at the end is working right now. It's generating revenue, and it has to be enhanced what's in place instead of just being a toy.
I mean, you wouldn't. I mean, you're not going to hire an employee that doesn't fit into the company and doesn't enhance your processes, right? So it's a good thing to think about on the tool side too.
It's a great way to look at it. Let's go ahead and jump to this to our next poll question to try and understand a little bit about the progress companies feel like they've made over the last 2 years with AI. Thinking about 2 years back, ChatGPT just coming on board or becoming more popular, and a lot of CEOs and C-levels making edicts. What's happened over the last couple of years? Give people a little bit of time to sort of put some more answers in. You can let us know. It's interesting. It's very few are in the no progress, and actually fewer than I thought in the little progress. A quarter roughly are saying they've made significant progress, and half have made some progress. I think there's a lot of people that want to say that AI is just hype, and what I'm hearing is very consistent with what I hear when I sit at a table and talk to somebody at a conference. That's not just the presenter, but somebody actually doing things. These things are happening. We're starting to see some value. So I do want to step back to challenges, and I think it's funny because I don't think we're going to start from scratch on challenges because we've already talked about them along the way. But I want to give us an opportunity again to think about the data challenges, some conversations around security, some conversations have come up around sort of the business side of things and looking at who owns the data and guardrails. What do you think are today's biggest challenges? And I'm gonna start. Start this one with Let's go with Patrick first on this one.
So biggest challenges companies are facing to
Yeah,
adopt.
and I think we can take the poll down now too. Thanks.
I think it's cultural. I think it's really just the mindset of the salty dogs, these supers and PMs and whatever the role is that have been in construction for decades, and they're awesome team members of all of us, and they get things done, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they've been executing very successfully. To convince them to use some chat, some prompts, some AI thing is very challenging and intimidating. And I think that's the biggest fight, is this sort of perception and morale, mindset that we've got to get over as an industry. And I think, interestingly, what we've seen in our company within coastal construction is kind of cool, because now we've got some, various committees and sort of tech forward folks that generally tend to be younger team members of ours. And we're seeing some of these older team members in a sort of a reverse like internship role, where they're now seeking out counsel from some of our younger team members, saying, hey, you know what, that looks pretty cool what you're doing. You're walking on this iPad, taking these pictures, you got your work done, whatever. It's pretty cool. Can you show me how you did that? Right. And now it's kind of the reverse role, which is, it's not across the board, but we are seeing cases of that, which is really cool. So it takes time, I think, to break down these barriers, the fear factor of AI. I think especially when GPT came out, the world's going to come to an end, we're all going to lose our job. Maybe that calmed down a little bit, and people are starting to see some opportunities here, and that, hey, this is here to stay. Get on board, or you're going to get run over, right? In the politest of ways. So that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, Dan, I know you talked about some of this when we talked about readiness. What are some of the things you're seeing at Ryan, or maybe even with some of the other companies you may, peer companies you may talk to?
Yeah. I actually was part of a small peer group of GCs that talked about this over the last year and a half. And so I think a lot of the challenges, I'll echo some of what Patrick said related to people. It's people and process in order to enable data that enables AI to do what it wants to do. And so I think there was a software vendor that was on a panel in one of these sessions we had that said, I think all the data exists to do all the things we want. And a GC stood up and said, and it's lying to you. And so I think that's not wrong. I think the technology exists and the data is possible there if we connect it in the right way and we approach it at the right problems. And that's still takes process and digitizing that data to an extent. There's a whole lot of process that happens up here or in a phone call that's not recorded or just on a chat that walks up to someone's desk. That's a lot of parts of our analog process in our industry. So, a lot of the challenges are figuring out the right points to digitize where we're going to make a meaningful impact. And so I think we're all, as an industry, focused on that, and every company is going to find their unique way to do it. But it comes down to people and process, and aligning that with the type of data we need to enable these use cases, and then trying what we try to do our best at Ryan, and some of the strategic direction we have is what right stories can we tell that resonate with the folks that we want to adopt this technology. The super that is likely fearful of their job being replaced by a robot or by an AI or by an automation, bring them along with the macroeconomics of, we can't find enough of you to begin with. We need to find ways to show how valuable they are as an individual, and we don't want them filling out forms. I don't want them capturing, what is their most useful time? The robot dog that we have walking around a job site doesn't go and argue with other subcontractors. We got to talk about what are the things that we want our human values to be doing, and how can we help accelerate and augment their time, because we can't find enough of them. And telling those right stories helps kind of alleviate some of those challenges and those fears, because fear is definitely a challenge. Data is a challenge. And so I think as an industry, we all are working on moving that needle forward. So that's kind of how I think about it.
I think bringing the robot dog to the argument with the other subcontractors, I think that might be beneficial. Okay, a couple on each side. Anthony, what are you seeing in terms of challenges right now?
Well, I think I would echo some of the cultural challenges, but I think Dan's definitely on the right track here, because I think when people get reassured that there's always a human, and really an expert human, in that loop of decision making that involves AI, everybody starts to relax. And earlier in the call I mentioned, interns, and I like to map that onto the AI use, because I say, look, you're not going to turn out the guy who just came out of construction school like loose on a project to run $100 million construction for you, right? And they'll say, well, no, he's going to come to the trailer, he's going to sit with me, etc. And I ask them, think about it the same way, right? You're getting quick responses, but you're filtering them through your judgment, and then you're informing the thing what the actual judgment is, just like you would a human intern. So this is a way to scale your expertise, which I find people actually very sensitive to, because we all know we're at a point of generational change in AEC, as a lot of folks are retiring. And I find all those folks are very conscious of stepping out of the workforce and taking a great deal of unique expertise with them when they go. And they actually don't want to leave that hole behind. And so they actually kind of get interested in these technologies that might help them to leave an effective legacy behind, so that the firms that they've devoted decades of their lives to aren't actually bereft of that experience. And I think when you start relating it to the value that the person is bringing to the table every single day, and making them understand that that value can have a much higher impact, and maybe even a legacy impact if they work with these tools, you start to break down those initial worries of replacement or obsolescence, and realize that the problems are much bigger than we can actually all address with the people alone, and that's where we use the technology.
Igor, what would you like to add to that?
Well, I would like to, for change, to shift discussion a little bit back to technology, because in my view, somebody mentioned gray hair, or absence of it. There is a kind of analogy that I have, that this huge shift in computing technology was with PC appearing, but really it happened when the Word and Excel were developed. So before that, it was just a toy. It was Atari, right? Playing games. But once the real tools appeared, that kind of killer applications appeared, it became the real kind of business, real change in business, and real kind of tectonic shift. So I think we are still not at that stage at AI. AI is a huge kind of change in our technology world, and would impact our lives moving forward. But we're still not at the age of the killer applications that really push it to the front end of business. And that still need to happen. In addition to what all other people said about the human factor and kind of adoptions and everything else.
Yeah, Igor, couldn't agree more. I'm going to come back to your killer application next. Eric, anything you'd like to add as well, either from a technology perspective or process perspective, or?
From an organizational perspective, I would say that, and that's what Ryan's company has done, but centralizing AI decisions so that they can serve other departments, I think seems really important for me. Of course, your engineers or software developers are gonna jump on it, but to really have that making an impact to your full organization, including less technical people, you need that kind of position. In terms of technology, for me, the biggest challenge is still the pace of change. And that, Ali Kodat, like focusing on your data is not a waste, because that will last. But just making a wait or buy solution is hard. Deciding to invest 6 months in something customized that may kind of be disrupt or a lot more faster to develop in a year from now. There are hard decisions, and so for that it's really important to deeply understand the technology, but also I would say the history of the technology. To be able to make a parallel between what happened in picture in 2010 to 2017 in translation technology in text, and to apply that to a world to kind of anticipate the pace of change that will happen in our world.
Good. I want to just remind the audience you can put questions into the Q&A. I'm going to ask another question that Igor, you really led us into nicely with the killer applications being, Excel and Microsoft Word, which may surprise people that you weren't around for the time. I think, when the internet came out, there were a lot of things that were just very practical happening. People putting up product sheets or a company contact form on the web. At the same time, Jeff Bezos was out dreaming up Amazon and how to change selling books that then turned into everything that's turned into. My question is AI should the focus right now be tactical or transformational? Should we be looking for those big things that are like the Amazoning of the construction industry, or if there are others on in your industry? Um, I've actually been really impressed with some of the things that I've heard that are just so practical about, you know, automating a review process that used to be paper or something like that, that just cut out like 75% of the time that it used to take, the lag time of something happening. And to me, those are kind of boring, but super practical. So, tactical or transformational. And Igor, I think you kind of hit that, hit that a little bit, but you also talked before about both. So I'm going to give you the first shot at that
Well, how about all above?
one.
And we are really not in a control here. I think it's going to happen, and some people will dream a big dreams like Amazon, and some people will solve the uh, small problems, and these two processes will reinforce each other. It's hard to know. I mean, right now we're in a infrastructure building, right? And the enormous amount of money goes to data centers, basically the backbone. So if we compare to internet, right, it's putting the cables around the country so everyone could access the internet. And in the same time, people were building applications there were at the beginning very impractical because you wait 10 minutes until the refresh of the page. I'm just exaggerating, but basically. Uh, so I think we're in this stage of AI, and we are more on the practical side. We are talking to the customers who have real needs. We do not create our own applications, so we're trying to get to do what we can with what we have right now. But I'm sure there will be big changes coming down the pipe, and I anticipate quite soon.
That's good.
Jim,
Dan? Oh, go ahead, Patrick. Jump in.
I was just going to add from a recruiting standpoint, it's interesting. We're hearing more and more of this. Number one, from general contractors that are trying to hire, some of the interns maybe that worked with them over summer or something. And from the estimating standpoint, maybe these are engineers or young men and women that are excited to bring their brain power to plans and really learn. And you tell them for the next few years, they're going to sit there with a ruler like this or a mouse and color plans and count toilets. Are you kidding me? You know how hard it is to recruit for that job? And on the code comply standpoint, we're hearing this from a lot of the, municipal governments we're selling to. And one of a very big city in America, I won't name, has been trying to hire like 45 plan reviewers for the last year. And they either can't pay enough or the job is so tedious and monotonous that people just don't want to do it. And like it or not, or whatever you want to say about the younger generation, they've grown up around technology and have screens in their face, right? They are tech forward. Let's be presenting them jobs that are tech forward, where they have the time to free up their brain to do the creative stuff, the real human stuff, really solving problems and adding value to the business or to the government, whatever it might be. Not telling them to go count toilets. Like, come on, we're sending people to the, working on a trip to Mars right now, and we're bringing rockets back. Like, it's kind of ridiculous what we're doing in our industry today. So I think the younger generation is going to force this change.
All right. Dan, what are you seeing?
I'm going to echo a little bit of what Igor said. I think you have to do both. I think you have to do both the tactical and the transformational thinking and strategy. So I think the tactical sets up your ability to do the transformational things. I don't think you can. I think it's very hard for, a lot of GCs like Ryan have been around for nearly 100 years, right? They've been around for a long time. I think it's incredibly hard to move those organizations incredibly fast. I think it's changing, but I think you have to do some of those tactical use cases, both to get wins and continue to energize your staff, energize your leadership, gain momentum, and set yourself on a path to think about those more transformational things. At the same time, I think you do need individuals and teams thinking about those transformational potentials. That is a moving target that no one's going to get right, but to at least help guide some of your tactical efforts. And so I think you have to do both. I don't think one is more important necessarily than the other, but I think that if you do some of the transformational thinking and strategizing, it can help inform some of the tactical efforts that you go after right away. But I use this example for a lot of people, and I think some companies, this is changing, have this idea in their head that AI is a light switch they can turn on someday when they choose to address it. It's not. It is a journey, and if you don't start somewhere, you're not going to get to the end state that some of us, theorize or think about, what those potential transformative states could be. But I think you have to do both.
Very good.
And Jim, I would
anything other than all of the above?
Yeah, I would just actually like to revisit your example on Amazon because, we look at Amazon like it's a technology company, but really what it is a logistics company. And there are a lot of problems to solve in there. And primarily it's, I can order this pencil in seconds and I can have it in hours, right, without leaving my chair. So undoubtedly, as the technology became available, Amazon started using predictive AI to figure out where something had to be when to make sure that that thing could happen. But it started with the goal, right? And I think I would advise the folks watching the seminar that you have to look at your processes in that way, right? What is our goal? And where can we inject these predictive processes, these tools, to increase efficiency and accuracy in what you're doing? And don't think we're just going to hand this whole thing over to AI any more than AI is showing up my door and dropping a package on my doorstep, right? There's still a truck, there's still a person, but that person is being informed by a whole digital infrastructure that's giving them information to make decisions rapidly. And that's where I think people have to look at this, like, where can I inject this kind of automated intelligence into my processes now to make them more accurate or more efficient?
Good. Eric, anything to add before we jump into Q&A?
Well, yeah, not so much. I would just say that I'm kind of confident that also we're moving in these directions. Today we see Amazon. I was probably too young to see growth, but for many years it has just been a bookstore, right? Before becoming this logistic platform, before becoming Amazon services, and I think within few years, like we will be able to access to any type of beam informations we want easily, and that will be the first step. That's the bookstore. I can access to my book anywhere. So I think we're gonna build that over time. That's probably a much more complex problem to solve, but it's gonna be built over time. And what will be probably revolutionized before is, again, the way we develop software, the software industry, and that's also gonna accelerate all this transition.
Good. We're going to jump into the Q&A now. This is I love this conversation. I wish we could keep it going, and I know we're getting to the top of the hour. If anybody has to drop off, the Q&A will be available in the recording as well, so you can come back and get that. One of the questions that came in, I love this, and Anthony, I think you might have mentioned it. About AI and, specifically maybe LLMs being able to process spatial data. Obviously, a lot of what happens in construction is, in the physical world, 2D, 3D. I'm going to just say one thing before I turn that to you, Anthony. One of the things that I wanted to do just to quickly wrap up is just say that AMC Bridge would like to invite people that want to understand a little bit more about what they may be doing, maybe having questions about where to start, to a workshop. And the QR code is right there, or you can reply to AMC Bridge, and they would love to get you involved in that. Anthony, I'm going to start with you though on that question of spatial data, and then anybody that has something they want to jump in on specifically there, let me know, and we'll. But we've got a lot of questions, so.
Well, I think there's a good analogy here around spatial data, around how people are using tools like vibe coding right now, where you start to write down what you want your code to do, and something starts producing actual executable code for that, right? And so, especially for folks who are not versed in traditional design tools or even design considerations, to have some kind of something they're more used to doing, which is typing, as a way to interface with something that is much more precise under the hood as far as the what it executes on. We think there's a lot of potential there, and so there's, I think, a point where a lot of these tools actually turn into ways to interface with something that is much more fussy under the hood. And we've implemented stuff like this in the past, and it works very well to draw in people who could never do this task or felt they couldn't do this task. In fact, I just saw, Dave Fano, of WeWork, previously, talking about how he's coding for the first time in his life because he can type in what he wants something to happen and he gets code out and it works, right? And so I think there's a potential for opening up these kind of activities to other people with much more precision under the hood.
Good. Anybody else want to jump on that one? I've got, like I said, I've got a lot of questions here. So, all right, I'm going to jump onto this next one. It's about people's take on IP when it comes to models, specifically something like ChatGPT or Gemini. How do you make sure data is secure beyond just an NDA? And I've actually been involved in some conversations recently where companies are, software vendors want to take a large volume of your data, use that to train their LLM, not include anything specific about it. Your data comes back out, but the model is there based on your data. How do people feel about their IP? And Dan, I'm gonna start with you, if I can, if that's all right.
Shoot, I was hoping he wouldn't.
All right, I'm gonna start with somebody else.
No, all good. I'll go and answer. I mean, I think it's something that someone mentioned here. We're in the early innings of AI, and we're all learning what we need out of this technology and what concerns we all have. So I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to give any legal advice in what I say. I think you need to take a hard look and work with your teams on what data you want to make sure is yours and what data you want to make sure is not someone else's. And I think the reason to have leadership in AI or data in general is to have people that are specifically reading those terms and conditions, the DPAs, and getting into understanding where your data is going and how they may or may not be using that data. So AI runs on data. We've said that many times here. And I think the more mature organizations get, they start to understand more about where their data is going and how it may be monetized elsewhere or even monetized back to them, and if they want to be in that type of relationship. And so, I think it's a journey. I don't have any right answers. It is something that on a tool by tool basis, on a process by process basis, we take a look at what the terms are, what our risks are, and what we're comfortable with as a company. We would rather form partnerships than than anything as a company, because that's our culture. And so I think that every company has their own preferences there. Selfishly, I don't want anyone to have Ryan's data or IP. That's not always the case in some of the contractual relationships we have with our tech vendors. So, I would say there's no silver bullet to that, and we're all learning in this space. Contracts are being written in various new ways. Some clients are putting in considerations on the use of AI that we then abide by, how our clients say we are to use it. And so there is just I would say, have teams that are educated and able to think on this, so that you're not having every individual in your company have to understand the language and the concerns. But what we've done from a holistic approach at Ryan is start to just educate broadly about some of these topics to everyone at the company, that data is fueled by AI. If you're using a free tool, it's free for a reason, and to build up some of the just understandings of how that works and your use of tools and the relationship you have with that, to continue to, again, it's building up our culture and our education around the technology. So I don't know if I answered that, but that's the way we think about it.
Jim, if I could jump in, I think it's
Yeah, and I know
interesting
you
to
have to
note.
jump off afterward too, Patrick. We understand you've got to
Yeah,
schedule
sorry,
things.
Jim. So, there was an interesting ruling just this week that Anthropic won, where the court ruled that they can use copyrighted data to train their models, right? So I don't know what that means necessarily for our industry, but if you play it out, I think it would mean that architects, engineers, plans that they, are gonna, is their IP, so to speak, or their copyright to have the equivalent could be trained by models, right? If that's a linear, mindset that we would have for our industry. So that's just interesting to think about. There are mixed court rulings on this, though. Directionally, though, I don't think you're going to be able to put the cat in the, back in the bag, right? It's out. Whatever GPT trained on, they trained on. Gemini, whatever they have access, they're going to do it, and then they're going to fight it out in court. And at that point, it's too late. The model already learned. I would also take a different, maybe thought approach on this. If we want to help the industry, all of us and collectively, right, trying to progress the industry, and what I believe our mission is to help more people have a roof over their head that they're proud of and that they can afford. And we can focus on building more good product for communities, especially workforce housing and those in need, then we should try to reduce costs. And how do you do that? A really good way is by starting with the pre-construction development phase. And the more data that's out there that's available, where with a click of a button, you can get a set of working construction documents that are up to code and up to spec with a click of a button and start building houses and apartments and other dwelling units in a much reduced time, then let's do it. And if that means you're sharing the layout of a plumbing plan for a 3-bedroom house, so what? Like, there's not an infinite amount of ways to share to do the plumbing of a 3-bed. It's just not that complicated, right? It's been done a million times. So let's let the models train on the layout for the plumbing and the electric and the structure and the mechanical. Like, we keep reinventing the wheel as if it's rocket science, and the problem's been solved, right? Let's use AI to give these layouts and reduce that pre-construction time and have a set of plans that with the click of a button is basically being approved. And now you're getting more product out there. Now we can use our brains to focus on livable, walkable, affordable communities that we're proud of, right? That are more sustainable, right? Like that to me, it should be our vision to use AI for the betterment of society.
Igor, I think you wanted to add something.
Yeah, I just want to add a hopeful sign again from the technology perspective. We are kind of lucky that AI is progressing quickly in IT and code development, and that's where people are very concerned about IP and intellectual property. And I think the Copilot is already showing the way of allowing to kind of localize code and not to submit it to the overall kind of the repository. So I think it's going to be soon technological solution for separating what's protected and what's not protected, and giving a way of giving some assurances to people that what they're doing proprietary using AI, not necessarily in a public domain, and what they need that needs to be in public domain will be there. And just again, sorry for this historical. When the internet was invented, nobody thought that banking would be online, right? How come you put all my kind of financial information for hacker to steal, right? Who doesn't do banking right now online? So I am hopeful that it's going to be technological as well as legal solutions to this problem, and they are already kind of emerging, I would say.
Yeah, there's some learning that's going to happen and some legislation going in. Anybody else want to add on to that? I want to ask one other quick question.
I think one of the interesting dynamics will be when clients start realizing that they already own all the data the designers have by contract, and start actually putting in provisions that if you are feeding this into a machine learning model, I want my cut. So I think sophisticated clients are going to start understanding the value of the data they've paid for and try to close that loop on extracting value back.
That'll be an interesting conversation on that one for sure. One quick question, just to understand technologies. What are we seeing the use of in practicality, in practice right now, are people using sort of the Gemini, GPT, Grok, sort of those public large language models, or are they, using something that is kind of more behind the scenes, creating something, on their own? Anybody have a thought on that?
Yeah, well, it really depends. Like, if you are again doing work with text, you're gonna use a large language models, so it's gonna be Anthropic, likely ChatGPT, Gemini. ChatGPT stay dominant. You'll move to some other models basically to resolve the problems of privacy. So there is public model that you can deploy inside your company that doesn't share your data. And so that's an alternative solution. The performance of search system, let's say, are equivalent to what ChatGPT was, a year and a half ago, to simplify. So that's when you work with text. If you start working with, computer vision, point cloud, or different type of data, or different type of task, you're gonna use completely different stack, completely different technology that you'll develop on site, or that you'll get from one of the software company you work with.
Good. Well, listen, we've gone a little bit long. If anybody, I know some people have to run to other things. I just want to thank all of the participants to this, including Patrick, who had to jump off. Thank you for taking the time away from your businesses to share with everybody what you're doing. I'd like to thank again AMC Bridge for bringing these people together. This is a fantastic, I think, asset for the industry. And I definitely suggest, if you want to take a look at some of the prior ones that I've been involved with, some but not all, that AMC Bridge has put together, definitely take a look, and then definitely consider the workshop that AMC Bridge is offering. Thank you all for attending, and wish everybody a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Igor.
Thank you.